life is suffering. Right. Indisputable. What do you do about that? You voluntarily accept it and then strive to overcome the suffering that's a consequence of that. And you do that for you, and you do that in a way that makes it better for other people. And then that works. And one question might be, well, how well does it work? And the answer is, the only way that you can find out is by trying it. That's it. That's the existential element of it. The proof is to be derived by the incarnation of the attitude in your own life. No one can tell you how it will work for you. It's the thing that your destiny is to discover that. And you have to make the decisions to begin with. It's like, because you can't do this without commitment. You have to commit to it first. That's the act of faith that Kierkegaard was so insistent upon. You have to say, I'm going to act as if being is good. I'm going to act as if truth is the pathway to enlightenment. I'm going to act as if I should pursue the deepest meaning possible in my life. And there's reasons to do none of those. They're real reasons. So it's really a decision. But you can't find out what the consequence of the decision is unless you make the decision. I think the same thing happens when you get married, by the way. So if you think you might leave, you're not married. And then you think, well, the marriage didn't succeed. It's like, well, maybe you were never married. Because the rule is, you don't get to leave. And there's a reason for that rule. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't situations where there should be exceptions made for that. That's not the point. The point is that there's some games you don't get to play unless you're all in. And the other thing that's so interesting about being alive is that you're all in. No matter what you do, you're all in. This is going to kill you. So I think you might as well play the most magnificent game you can while you're waiting. Because do you have anything better to do? Really? Why not pick the best thing possible that you could do? Why not do that? Maybe you could justify your wretched existence to yourself that way. I think you could. That's what it looks like. You know, people find such meaning in the responsibilities they adopt, it stops making them ask questions about what life is for. If you have a newborn child, for example, like unless you're really in a bad way, psychotically depressed, or maybe your personality really needs some retooling, you stop thinking about anything but ensuring that that baby is doing well. And if someone comes along and asks you an existential question about your commitment to that, the right response is, why are you asking me such stupid questions when this is manifesting itself right in front of your eyes? Like, how blind can you be? That isn't a time for questions about the meaning of life. The answer is right in front of you. And if you can't see it, it's not because life has no meaning, it's because you're blind. I mean, that's what the image of the Virgin Mother and the child is all about. It's like, what's the answer to the meaning of life? Here's an answer. It's like, well, I'm going to criticize that. Well, go right ahead. You know, it's like what you're like a what do you call that? A termite gnawing on a temple. There's no utility in that sort of criticism. It's blindness. And it's the same thing with regards to the path of the hero. It's like it glistens in front of you and you can criticize it. It's like, fine. Put the cart before the horse and see how far you get. The first thing you have to do is orient yourself. Now, you probably have all watched Pinocchio, and Pinocchio is about how a marionette, someone whose strings are being pulled by forces beyond his comprehension. That's the situation of the undeveloped individual. Geppetto, who's a benevolent father, so a benevolent symbol of benevolent culture, makes a puppet, his son, and then wishes on a star. Now, a star is something that glitters up in the sky, and it's associated with the transcendent and the beyond and the divine. And you know, if you look up in the night sky and it's very dark, you get a feeling of awe. It's because you're confronting your soul, so to speak. Your individual soul is confronting the cosmos, and you can feel a relationship between you and the totality. So looking up into the sky is like a religious experience if it's a starry sky. And to wish upon a star is to find a light that orients you like the North Star, and to pick a highest goal, to pick the highest goal you can conceive of. And so that's what Geppetto does. He raises his eyes above his his day-to-day concerns and tries to establish a relationship with the highest of all possible values. And he has the most profound of wishes, and the most profound of wishes is that the puppet that he's created could become a genuine individual, a genuinely, fully developed human being. And that's what you can wish for yourself. You can wish and aim for that in yourself. And then, you see, that's how you deal with the suffering that's attendant on life, because life is suffering, and because life is very hard, and people get sick, and they become mentally ill, and there's malevolence in the world, and there's tragedy, and so life is very, very hard. And if you're not properly oriented with regards to life, the fact that it's hard and the fact that it's full of suffering can warp and twist and bend you until you become murderous and resentful, and even go beyond murderous and resentment to wish for genocide, and even to wish for the destruction of everything. And so you have to learn how to strengthen yourself as an individual so that you can bear the burden of being without becoming corrupt. You have to decide that that is what you're aiming for, is that you want to become a fully developed human being and stop being a pathetic marionette whose strings are being pulled by horrible forces behind the scenes. If you're aiming at the good, then you want what's good for you. And I mean good for you as if you were taking care of yourself and were good to yourself, were treating yourself like someone you loved, that was good for you in a way that would also be good for your family. And then it would be good for you and your family in a way that was also good for society. And then it would be good for you and your family and society in a way that would be good for the world. And then it would be good now, and it would be good next week and the week after, and a year from now, and as long into the future as you can see. So the good is something that's equilibrated across multiple levels of being and multiple time frames simultaneously. And it isn't necessarily that you know what that is going to be at any given moment, but you can orient yourself so that's the state that you want to exist in. And I can tell you, as far as I can tell, when you exist in that state, even moment by moment, your life is imbued with a sense of meaning, and that sense of meaning can help you transcend suffering. The philosopher Nietzsche said, "He who has a why can bear any how. He who has a why can bear any how." And so Nietzsche's idea was that if there was purpose in your life of sufficient grandeur, that not only could the suffering in life be accepted, but maybe it could even be appreciated. Like it could be that you're willing to bear the burden of being because of the exciting things that you can do with being, the things you can build, and the things that you can bring about. And that might be the highest imaginable state of being, and that's a form of paradise. But it's not a paradise that you attain by transforming others. It's a paradise that you attain by transforming yourself. And that's a very difficult thing to do, and it's a very frightening thing to do, because it means that you're retooling your soul, and that's a job for that's the job for a forthright and honorable person. And it's an exciting enough task so that it will keep you occupied for the rest of your life, and then magical things will happen to you while you're doing it. And the world will arrange itself around you in the most wonderful way, in a musical way, so that every part of what you're experiencing plays off against every other part in a manner that has meaning embedded in every aspect of it. When you hear people like Joseph Campbell say things like "follow your bliss," and so that sounds pretty easy. You want to develop your personality, just do what you love. It's a corruption of Carl Jung's thinking, because Jung would say, well, follow what you're interested in, it'll take you somewhere you really don't want to go, and then maybe you'll learn something. So, and that's a whole different proposition. So, human beings, if you talk about a human being, you tend to use something that's like a story. And when you recount your own being, you tend to use something like a story, and that sort of begs the question, does that mean, in fact, that your experience is either a story or something like a story? One of the things Jung said, I really like this, is you should figure out which story you're living. Because you're living a story. And it might be a tragedy. And so, you want to find out, because if it's a tragedy, you don't come to a very good end. Another thing Jung said was, this is also worth thinking about, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. And so what Jung would say is that if you're living out a tragedy, the tragedy has you. You don't have it. And if you can figure out what the tragedy is that has you in its grip, then you have a fighting chance of escaping from it into a more pleasing plot. But it's no easy thing. So if you're one of those people to whom the same terrible thing keeps happening over and over, after the third time, approximately, you might ask yourself, is this the world or is this me?